Aloha, I'm Osa Tui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association, and happy to be joined here today by Senator Brandon Elefante. He is the Senate Labor Chair and also represents the area of Pearl City and Aiea. And we're here just to talk about how this legislative session went and some thoughts and what we have to look forward to in the future, perhaps. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're happy to have you in our home here. As a fellow public school graduate, you graduated from Aiea High School. Can you tell us a little bit about your public school journey?
Yeah, so thank you, Osa, and thank you to HSTA and for all the teachers and union members for just hosting for today's podcast that we're here today. So my journey, like you, public school graduate from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, all in Aiea. I grew up in Aiea in Pearl City, and during that time, I really saw firsthand how hardworking our teachers really spent their number of days and hours, even when they're sick, to doing lesson plans, to even getting involved in extracurricular activities with clubs or sports. Teachers really go above and beyond. And I really saw that firsthand as a student. And I'm very grateful because that really contributed to my learning environment throughout from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade.
Yeah, I assume you were some kind of leader in school, or what were you involved in when you were in school?
So I was involved in a lot. And a lot, was more kind of because I was curious and curious of getting involved, not just only in the academic parts of it, which, that's what you're there for,
correct.
Is to study and to learn and to graduate and to meet those requirements. But I was involved in band throughout high school. I was also involved in graphics club, student council. I was second vice president at Aiea High School, so I did that for several years. And then science club and different activities. Skills USA VICA was another club where I honed in on interview skills and learning about that. And then a lot of people might not know this, but I actually helped out in the cafeteria.
Oh.
And so I was a cafeteria cashier, cafeteria monitor. I don't know what they called it back then. But I did that, and that was, a great way to practice customer service and help me to do what I'm doing now.
Correct. Well, they no longer allow students to do that.
Oh, they don't? Oh, wow. So that's,
Yeah. But
shucks.
You sound like you were the ideal student. Great job. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hear you wrote like a letter to the editor back in 2001. What was that all about?
Yeah, so I did. And thank you for mentioning that also. So 2001, as you're familiar with, was a time that the teachers were on strike.
Absolutely.
And it was my first year, my freshman year at Aiea, and we didn't have any school for several weeks. And I felt compelled to write a letter to the editor. I don't know if it's still around or published, but in the gist of it, basically what I wrote is that this strike really impacted one's learning, even though maybe some of my peers were like, hey, no school, right? But really it's the detrimental impact that it can have on someone and their future learning, especially at a early part in your high school career. And so I wrote and, hoping that, the state would work with the teacher union to find a negotiable agreement so that they could settle and get the teachers back to work on the contracts that they deserve. Didn't quite know all that at the time, but I just knew we need to get our teachers back to work so that we can get back into school.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
In 2001, when we were on strike, I remember my AP Calculus kids, that's like 3 weeks that they weren't able to get instructions. So we had to get the late exam and struggle to, try and catch up as best we could. So.
Yeah, and it can be hard, right? And especially as a teacher that you're playing catch up, and when you play catch up, it can be a little difficult in that sense.
Yeah. So it sounds like school prepared you well for where you are now. You were in the city council and then at the legislature and doing great things. You're the labor chair in the Senate. We really, really appreciate that. We, as you may have known, we had a successful legislative session this year. We're very thankful to you and to a lot of your colleagues who put forth our bills and championed our bills and finally got it through. So we're just, crossing our fingers that they all get the signatures they need.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
We did want to talk about some of the ones that we passed, like automatic step increases. That is something that HSTA has been pushing for a long time. And so we're so thankful for that because in so many other districts, they get automatic step increases. So why wouldn't we do the same?
Yeah, and thank you, to your government relations team, to
Mm,
Jason, Millie, and all the folks at HSTA
yeah.
for your leadership. Also, I know the annual step increases was a big priority for
Yeah.
you and for the union. And what I didn't know was that that's something that was being worked on for nearly a decade, and we
Yeah.
finally got something passed. This session. So
Yes.
also thanks to the education chair and the vice chair, and then
Hmm.
the House Education Chair and the Vice Chair there, and also the finance committees, because it really took
Oh, yeah.
a cocko effort,
Exactly.
basically everyone involved
Hmm.
to really see, yeah, hey, we want to prioritize our teachers. This is important, and we need to show that by passing this legislation. So yes, crossing fingers
Hmm.
that enroll to the governor that he
Yes.
sees that there is a lot of merits to this
Yeah.
legislation.
Thanks for pointing out Jason and Millie. They were stellar this
Yes.
year. We really appreciate what they did. Um, and so, it just shows that teachers can do things. This was historic for us to get
Mhm.
that. So, very happy. There's some other things. Unfortunately, someone had to get punched in the face for us to be able to finally get the and educator safety bill forward. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that in itself, teachers and coaches and
Hmm.
faculty really put themselves on the line a
Yeah.
lot of times, and even dealing with the general public and
Hmm.
passing education safety bill. And actually, not only did we pass that one, there was also another one that we did pass for temporary restraining orders that was
Yeah.
part of the judiciary
Hmm.
package that the Labor and Technology Committee did work on in addition to
Nice.
this, so that we have the appropriate safeguards for our public workers,
Hmm.
so that in the event that we hope that they don't run into an issue like this, but that they would have representation, that there
Hmm.
would be a process with the Department
Hmm.
of Education where they could seek legal counsel and then go from there. And I think it's important, as we go about into this new age, that
Yes.
school safety is really the utmost priority
Yes. Absolutely.
throughout all our campuses.
Correct.
As someone who was a teacher
Hmm.
before, not in the public sector, but I also coached as well, and so I
Hmm.
can understand, the dynamics of
Yeah.
things and
Parents
issues
get.
and parents. Yeah, parents are really passionate about
Yes.
their children, and that's great. But
Hmm.
I think there's also a space in place that, okay, at the end of the day, that yes, this is a sporting event,
Hmm.
and while there is a winner and loser through all this, there is kindness and respect, and those are
Yeah.
the values I think we should be preaching, and values of aloha in and out of the classroom.
Yeah. There are, teachers are often harassed by parents. There's asking your teacher
Mm.
to, hey, what are you doing? But when you cross, there's a line that's often crossed, and our teachers just feel like, hey, shouldn't our employer be supporting us, in
Yes.
these things? And when the employer was saying, like, you're on your own, go get your own TRO to, it's not our problem. It's like, we're doing this in the day-to-day job that we're doing. It's not like we just encountered this person off the street. So why
Right.
aren't you helping us as an employer? So thank you so much for
You're
that.
welcome.
Yeah. Emergency hires was another bill that we were very happy. It extends their emergency hire status from 3 years to 5
Mm-hmm.
years. It's really important for us because to throw away, for a lot of our emergency hire teachers, 3 years is just not long
Yes.
enough, right? And so to throw them away basically and say, we're going to start fresh with somebody else it's really helpful that we got this to 5 years.
Yeah, and thank you for the support on that,
Hmm.
and thank you to the introducers who've worked on
Hmm.
that to get that legislation across the
Yeah.
finish line. I do feel that is a critical need. There is a big teacher shortage.
Hmm.
We see that impacts learning in the classroom and outside the
Yeah.
classroom, and that, as you mentioned, right, also that extends that sort of period for teachers that
Hmm.
want to teach or want to stay
Correct.
here,
Correct.
even for I believe the ones on the visa program, right, that
Yes.
come here that are filling in for emergency hires and
Hmm.
really have ingrained themselves in communities
Yes.
and have really been a part of that.
Hmm.
And I think that's important because, one day maybe they want to get their credentials and license, and there is that pathway for that. And my hope is that more people would want to become teachers,
Yeah.
if that's the calling for folks that want to become an educator.
Yeah, we've seen a number of teachers on J1 visas
Hmm.
coming to our state, primarily from the Philippines. We
Hmm.
have a couple from Kenya now. So, and I think they've been doing a great job in supporting our schools that have struggled for years and
Yes.
years and years to just have somebody. We've, depended on what we call long-term subs to fill in these gaps. But really, having people who integrate well has been wonderful to have them, and they definitely want to stay longer,
Yes.
right? And the way that it was with the 3 years, they had to return, and they actually could stay up to 5 years. So this will be helpful for them as well. Um, and if they do 5 years and they go home for 2 years, because it's a cultural exchange visa,
Yes.
they do have to go home, and maybe they can come back for another 5 years. And after 10 years of service, they might have some benefits that they can accrue as well. So
Yeah. Well,
uh,
great legislation.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And speaking of great legislation, can you just walk us through what the legislative process is, how these things work as we start considering what we're going to do for next year? I mean, I don't know how we top this, but
Yeah. You can always get better, right? You
yeah,
always
yeah.
improve, right? You build upon each year. So this is
Correct.
my fourth legislative session year.
Mhm.
I came in back in 2022 when I was termed out at the city council. And
Mhm.
for a first timer, someone that's not used to the legislative process, it can be very challenging and very confusing.
Yeah.
We do have the public access room that's available for citizens to learn about the process, but really what I would tell students that would visit the Capitol is like, just go look at the YouTube Schoolhouse of Rock.
Yeah.
Even though that's related to Congress,
Correct.
that shows you how
Similar-
a bill
similar
gets passed
process,
into
yeah.
law. And part of that is, it starts off with an idea,
Mhm.
and then the idea gets formulated into a formal process of writing and drafting legislation into a bill,
Mhm.
or maybe a resolution, which has a lesser effect of a bill, which a bill could become law.
Yes.
And then it goes through the respective process of where it gets referred to, which committees. Usually it's based on subject matter. So the annual step increases had a referral of education and labor in the Senate side, and in Ways and Means because there's a financial component.
Absolutely.
And then as it goes to that, it has to pass 3 readings in both House and Senate.
Mhm.
So it's a very long
Complicated,
process,
yep.
a very complicated process over the course of 4 months. And then after it passes the legislature, as it goes through all that, there's amendments, there's changes,
Yep.
there's advocates that want certain things or may not want certain things.
Yep.
And then now this period that we're in now, right after session all the way till July, is when the governor, reviews and
Correct.
decides which bills he wants to sign into law or
Correct.
not, or veto. So
Correct.
it's a long process, as you mentioned, but I think it's, that's where democracy is,
Yep.
where people can voice their opinion and share their thoughts.
Yeah. And for us, like, the legislative session happens every single year. Not like, we're known as, we have to negotiate a contract, but for us, sometimes we don't negotiate a contract until, every 4 years.
Right.
So the legislative process is just something that's ongoing, and it really, is one of our priorities that we have to make sure that we keep, making relationships with our legislators and letting you folks know what our concerns are. You let us know what your concerns are,
Yeah.
things like that.
And I
Yeah,
think it's
so-
important. And one thing that you folks have done quite well, and thanks to your government relations team, is really meet with elected officials early and talk about the concerns and communicate that. Because I think that's a big factor. Because the thing is, there's so much pieces of legislation that, I mean, you folks have a finite area of, knowing teacher standards, knowing what's important to your members. For us, we have to learn a little bit about everything across the whole spectrum. And so having you folks to share like, hey, what's really going on at a national level to a local level, and really communicating that's helpful knowledge to us.
Oh, yeah.
So that we can make really good choices at the end of the day.
Well, and I assume you also hear from your constituents, and you're welcome them to
Yes.
provide feedback as well, right?
Yes, I do
Call
too.
in and email and things like that. So, what are some of the concerns you're dealing with in your neck of the woods?
Yeah. So, constituents write to us about all kinds of stuff, and I think what comes to mind is, just the state of the economy, what's going on a national level,
Yes.
and federal policies at a national level and how they impact Hawaii. And then we saw that early on as we were crafting the budget on how, SNAP benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, how that would impact, obviously, cost of living, housing's a big part, especially for teachers and finding workforce housing, building new housing and building housing in areas that might be around schools or key areas in key neighborhoods. And so we also hear about crime and safety. We talked a little bit about it at our school levels. And so one thing I know that kind of wasn't mentioned before, but another issue I worked on was Senate Bill 99, which allows for a school resource officer that's
Yes.
retired to come back and work with the schools. And we've seen a sort of a pilot program out on the west side.
Correct.
And so we hope we can see that kind of rolled out, in different communities where that can be an available tool for someone that may be retired, but like, I want to give back to the community and I want to help out at the schools. So safety, crime, that's top of mind in that. And then I know we're going to talk about this a little bit too, but it's really school facilities. That's something that us as legislators, we champion, and we want to, make sure that there are top of the notch facilities, understanding that we also have a very aging infrastructure in that sense.
Quite a bit. So yeah, what are some of the infrastructure issues at some of your schools, for example?
Yeah, so one thing I'm very excited about and is Aya High School just awarded a contract for the new athletic football field.
Oh.
And that's something that they've been waiting for years. Actually, the last time they had a new field was when I was a senior, and we couldn't graduate on it because we had a new field. So we had to graduate at Aloha Stadium. But so they finally are now getting that. Also with their Title IX women's locker room and athletic facility and then fencing. So that when you have something brand new like that, especially for the students and faculty, it makes something so meaningful for them to be a part of their campus. It makes them appreciate that, just that little change and even just landscaping in itself. So that's one key big project. And I know at the Department of Education, they've kind of lumped in a bunch of maintenance projects all in one. And I know there's a lot of different maintenance, across the board. Every school needs a lot of things and facilities and upgrades for their area. I know Pro City High School, will be getting a new medical classroom and tennis courts in that sense. So a little bit goes a long way in different areas, but those are some things that sort of come to mind.
Yeah, definitely. You want to get for your constituents. I've been to a lot of rural schools where, holes in the floors and just things like that, right? So lots and lots of aging facilities, as you mentioned. You talked about SNAP and Medicare and Medicaid, all that kind of stuff too. We see it as teachers when our students, their families are the ones directly affected. And we see, how much support they need, how much help they need. And then teachers are often digging into their pocketbooks trying to, support and help.
And teachers make so much sacrifices, especially with that, especially if you see their kids that, are struggling, even struggling to eat, that's a concern as well, right? And how do you make that available with school meals and nutritious meals so that they're able to function and learn in the classroom?
Yeah, and so, that's one of the future goals is to have universal free meals.
I'm in support of that. I know that's a big cost to that, but
definitely the lowest income students, great, they have it. But there are some families who are, kind of that, they just fall through the cracks or, families just make that certain threshold. And so then their kids actually suffer because they don't get the meals that they need. But we're very happy at the progress we made so far.
Yes.
We know that there's more room to go. We're very grateful, and hopefully facilities is something that we can fix, and some of these other things. As I mentioned, our teachers are digging out of their pockets, but as we see, prices are going up. Gas prices are, skyrocketing. Rents, finding some place to live is hard. So we have to make sure that teacher salaries can keep up with all of that stuff as well. So we'll be looking to you folks next year, hopefully. If you can fund whatever contract we can hopefully come to agreement to next year, we're going to need your support as well. Just wondering if you have any final thoughts or any,
No, I think, this was a very productive session, and working with you, Osa, and your leadership team. I think, for what I've been hearing is, in the communities, a lot of the teachers and members, especially with the step increases, that's very huge. And so thank you for
and then the labor
support.
Community also thanks you for, as being labor chair, lots of issues we want to make, Hawaii continues to remain a labor stronghold, and we want to continue.
It is, and it's one of the top labor states, throughout the country. Next to that would be, California, and this is my first year. And so I had a lot to learn, and I'm still learning, through that process. But yes, it's a very tight-knit labor community. I think 1 in 4 people are, a union member,
And we invite you to reach out to us. We invite you to, invite teachers and everyone to reach out to you if they have thoughts as well? Sorry, don't overwhelm you, but
No.
if there are helpful thoughts,
And
please share.
I just want to just do one shout out, and that shout
Absolutely.
out is really to all the teachers throughout my life
Yeah.
that have made an impact. Going down from kindergarten from Mrs. Goshima all the way to my fifth and sixth grader twice, Mrs. Okino,
Oh, really? Wow.
to high school, where I had a bunch of great mentors and people along the way that have gone over and beyond. Mrs. Bento and a bunch of teachers at the high school level that have really given back, and even the principal now at Aya High School, he was my driver's ed teacher at Moana Loa, even though I didn't go to Moana
Yeah,
Loa,
yeah.
but that's where
Correct,
driver's
that's
ed
where
was
it was. Yeah,
available.
yeah, yeah.
So Mr. Guevara was
Well, just know
very
that
helpful.
they are super proud of you too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So, it just shows that public education and where our teachers work day in and day out can produce many outstanding citizens in this world. And so my heart goes really out to all the teachers out there that have made an impact.
as a public school graduate, you know the struggles that we go through. You've seen it, yourself. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Osa.
Good luck with you, and we look forward to your future as well.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.